Over time, mutual distrust replaced pragmatic cooperation. After Chavez's death in 2013, Nicolas Maduro inherited both his political model and a far more fragile economic and social situation. A combination of falling oil prices, mismanagement, and structural weaknesses in the economy led to severe shortages, inflation, and declining living standards. Political polarization deepened, and conflicts between the government and opposition intensified. Disputed elections, restrictions on opposition figures, and the weakening of independent institutions further strained Venezuela's international standing. These developments hardened attitudes in Washington and among many of its allies, who increasingly framed Venezuela not simply as a political partner with differences, but as a case of democratic erosion and governance failure. This shift marked a decisive break from the earlier period of engagement and cooperation, the confrontation that now characterizes U.S.-Venezuela relations is therefore not the product of a single event, but the result of a long historical evolution in which domestic political change in Venezuela, economic crisis, and shifting global power relations gradually transformed a pragmatic partnership into a sustained diplomatic conflict. Concerns about democracy and governance have become central to how many governments, particularly in North America and Europe, understand and respond to the political situation in Venezuela. These concerns are not limited to a single election or a single legal change, but have developed over time as a pattern of institutional weakening, political concentration of power, and reduced space for political competition. From an external perspective, the issue is less about ideological disagreement and more about whether the political system continues to meet basic standards of representation, accountability, and the rule of law that underpin international legitimacy. Elections lie at the heart of these concerns. While Venezuela continues to hold elections, critics argue that changes to electoral rules, the composition of electoral authorities, and the political environment in which campaigns take place have undermined their fairness. Restrictions on opposition candidates, unequal access to media, and the use of state resources in campaigning are frequently cited as factors that distort competition. When elections are perceived as lacking credibility, they lose their capacity to resolve political disputes peacefully and instead become another arena of conflict. This contributes to long-term instability because political actors no longer trust institutional mechanisms to manage disagreement. The judiciary and other oversight institutions play a crucial role in maintaining democratic balance, and their perceived independence has also become a major point of contention. When courts are seen as politically aligned or subject to executive influence, legal processes lose credibility both domestically and internationally. This affects everything from property rights to criminal justice, and it weakens the idea that all actors are bound by the same rules. In such an environment, political disputes are more likely to spill into the streets, the media, or foreign diplomacy rather than being settled through legal and institutional channels. Human rights form another dimension of this debate. Reports by international organizations and non-governmental groups have documented cases of arbitrary detention, restrictions on freedom of expression, and excessive use of force against protesters. Whether every claim is accepted or contested, the accumulation of such reports shapes international perceptions and policy responses. Governments that prioritize human rights as part of their foreign policy tend to interpret these patterns as evidence of systemic problems rather than isolated incidents, and this interpretation influences their willingness to engage normally with the Venezuelan authorities. At the same time, Venezuela has sought economic partnerships outside traditional Western channels, particularly with countries willing to provide investment loans or technical support in exchange for access to resources or political alignment. This has further internationalized the crisis, linking Venezuela's internal struggles to broader patterns of global economic and strategic competition. The result is a situation in which oil, finance, and economic policy are not separate from politics, but deeply intertwined with it. Economic pressure shapes political behavior, political decisions shape economic outcomes, and both together influence how Venezuela is positioned within the international system and how other states justify their actions toward it. Issues such as electoral guarantees, the release of political detainees, the role of international observers, and the sequencing of sanctions relief are typically central to these discussions. While many of these efforts have stalled or failed, they have also demonstrated that channels of communication can exist even in highly polarized environments. International mediation plays a crucial role in these processes by providing neutral platforms and technical support. Mediators can help frame issues in less confrontational terms, propose incremental steps, and ensure that commitments are documented and monitored. The credibility of mediators matters greatly, as both sides must believe that the process is fair and that outcomes will be respected by the broader international community. This is why different actors, including regional states, European countries, and multilateral institutions, have at various times attempted to support negotiations. Humanitarian engagement is another essential component of a peaceful approach. Separating humanitarian assistance from political disputes helps ensure that aid reaches those in need without being used as leverage or propaganda. International agencies and non-governmental organizations have worked to provide food, medical supplies, and support for vulnerable populations, often in cooperation with local actors. These efforts not only alleviate suffering, but also help rebuild minimal trust and social stability, which are necessary for any longer-term political process. Confidence-building measures are also important. These include actions such as easing restrictions on civil society, allowing independent media greater freedom, improving prison conditions, or agreeing on partial sanctions relief in exchange for verifiable steps toward reform. Such measures do not resolve the crisis on their own, but they can reduce fear, signal goodwill, and make broader agreements more achievable. The central challenge lies in aligning the incentives of all parties toward compromise rather than confrontation. Political actors must see negotiation as more beneficial than stalemate, and external powers must prioritize stability and human welfare over strategic rivalry. This requires patience, consistency, and a willingness to accept gradual progress rather than immediate transformation. In this sense, peaceful resolution is not a single event, but a process that unfolds over time, shaped by trust, institutional rebuilding, and sustained international support aimed at helping Venezuelan society recover and reconcile. If we could step back for a moment, far enough to see the world not as a map of borders and flags, but as a living system of people, resources, ideas, and power, we would notice something remarkable. A decision made in one capital can ripple outward across oceans into villages, cities, and families thousands of miles away. In this vast and interconnected world, no crisis truly belongs to just one nation. Today, we turn our attention to a place of extraordinary natural richness and human resilience. A country blessed with immense resources, vibrant culture, and a complex history, and yet one that now finds itself at the center of global attention, political tension, and human struggle. What is happening there is not only about leadership or policy, or even about one country confronting another. It is about how power moves through the world, how systems strain and shift, and how ordinary lives are shaped by forces far beyond their control. To understand this moment, we must look beneath the headlines, beyond the slogans, and past the simplified narratives of heroes and villains. We must observe patiently, as we would in nature, tracing patterns over time, watching how pressures build, how alliances form, how institutions weaken or adapt, and how people respond when the ground beneath them changes. Because what we are witnessing is not a sudden event, but the result of many years of political choices, economic structures, regional dynamics, and global competition quietly interacting, until one day their combined weight becomes impossible to ignore. This is not a story about conflict alone. It is a story about interdependence, about how energy, governance, migration, and diplomacy intertwine, about how decisions taken far from home can reshape lives in ways unseen, and how the search for stability in one place can unsettle another. And at the heart of it all, there are people, navigating uncertainty, adapting, enduring, and hoping. So let us take this journey carefully, thoughtfully, and without haste. Let us explore what forces are at work, how they came to be, and why they matter, not only for one nation, but for all of us who share this increasingly connected world. As we step back from the details of policy, power, and diplomacy, one truth becomes clear. Venezuela's crisis is not the result of a single decision, a single leader, or a single nation's actions. It is the outcome of long-term political choices, economic structures, regional pressures, and global rivalries interacting over time. The way forward does not lie in isolation, escalation, or confrontation. It lies in patient diplomacy, credible dialogue, humanitarian responsibility, and respect for the dignity of people whose lives are shaped by these forces every day. Sustainable solutions will not come from pressure alone, nor from rhetoric, but from cooperation within Venezuela, across the region, and throughout the international community. If there is a lesson to take from this situation, it is that stability cannot be built on power alone. It is built on institutions that are trusted, economies that are inclusive, and relationships that are guided by responsibility rather than rivalry. The choices made now, by governments, by international organizations, and by civil society, will shape not only Venezuela's future, but the character of international cooperation in the years to come. Understanding must come before judgment. Dialogue must come before division. And peace must remain the guiding purpose behind every policy decision. Thank you very much for watching and for taking the time to engage with this important global issue. We wish you clarity, insight, and good fortune, and we look forward to seeing you again. Good luck.